What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Command and Console. My name is Jason. Today, you see the title, we're going to be talking about the early days of the PlayStation 2 and talk about why I think it was pretty underappreciated, especially these days, and especially just on fire when it came out. I've got a stack of games here. I'm just going to talk about what we got in those early PlayStation 2 days and just show you how good we had it back then, because there was some absolute top tier games that I think just made the console that more successful when it first came out. I was 14 years old when the PS2 came out. My parents could not afford to get me one for that Christmas. We got a Dreamcast instead, which I will always appreciate that because I loved the Dreamcast growing up as well. But yeah, I didn't get a PS2 until around about 2003. And yeah, loved every bit of it when I finally got one in my hands back in the day. If you go back and look at the actual catalogue of games within that first couple of years, absolute awesome titles coming out all over the shop, right? Absolutely amazing titles. And I've just got a stack here just to gush about those early titles and the beginning of PS2, because I feel like the PS2 hit its stride in the mid 2000s. Between, I say, 2003 and 2005, you really got some of the biggest hits of the generation there. But those early years, you got some unbelievable titles. Yeah, so let's just get on with talking about those, I suppose, right? So yeah, you got awesome strategy games came out, like Kessen from Koei. Awesome game. If you like Dynasty Warriors and want something more strategy based, Kessen was the game that I absolutely loved. Kessen 2 might be even better, but we're talking about early games. Early game being this one. Great title there. You got fighting games as well in this early days of PS2. The game I played the most back then was Tekken Tag Tournament, an awesome fighting game that had tag mechanics in there. I always remember going to my neighbour's house and playing shitloads of this with them at their house, because they had a PS2 before me, so they were like my little early gateway into PlayStation 2, and we played loads of Tekken Tag Tournament. An awesome Tekken game, all things considered. I prefer this over stuff like Tekken 4 and Tekken 5, for example. We got the beginning of one of my favourite video game franchises of all time, and that is the Onimusha series. What a great way to kick off PS2 with a game Onimusha. You want Resident Evil, but you want samurais killing demons. Boom, there we go, that's Onimusha. Awesome series of games, and it started in the early days of PS2. We got the granddaddy of the open world sandbox game, which made it infinitely replayable, infinitely popular, and became one of the biggest gaming series ever made. Grand Theft Auto 3. You can't talk about early PS2 without talking about this juggernaut, because it changed the landscape of what video game can be. And yeah, open world crime game, do what you want, cause chaos. Yeah, this one pretty much changed the landscape of what video games could really be in the early 2000s. You got quirky platformers, of course. The platformer hadn't officially died yet in the PS2 landscape. You had stuff like Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter, which I don't own yet, but I will do eventually. But the one on the highlight in this one is Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex. It's not everyone's favourite Crash Bandicoot game, but I think it's a really good one that is still kind of holds that kind of vibe of the original trilogy. Really like this one. Quirky action title in this next one, MDK2. An awesome, weird, fuzzball craziness of this series. The first game's fantastic. The second game is pretty much on par for me. Love this one. Quirky art style, silly comedy, and crazy action, all things considered. Really good early PS2 game. Love that one. Gonna get on to some racing games. We got Midnight Club by Rockstar. Came out before Grand Theft Auto 3, and I feel like this game really holds up today. It's a really quality racing game. It's really fun to play. I feel like it showcases the PS2, especially back then, in a very good light. Cool graphics, cool lighting effects, and the cars look pretty cool in it as well. The granddaddy of PS2 racing games, of course, in the early 2000s, we got Gran Turismo 3. One of the best racing games of all time. Sentimentally, to me, it has the best soundtrack in the whole series. And 2, I played loads of it. Again, this is another game that I discovered through a friend who had a PS2 before I did. So I played loads of it around a friend's house, and then obviously got my own PS2. The early 2000s were absolutely killing it for PS2. The early days of PS2. This might be one of the biggest games in terms of showcasing what the PS2 can do graphically on the system. And yeah, Gran Turismo 3 was absolute fucking awesomeness. Last one for racing would be Wipeout Fusion. Sony were on this just like banger after banger kind of mentality where it's like, right, what are our biggest franchises? Let's get sequels out for the PS2 as early as possible. So, you know, you've got Gran Turismo 3. Let's get a Wipeout sequel out there as well. Yeah, Wipeout Fusion, a really good Wipeout game. It's not one of my favourites. I still love Wipeout 2097, probably my favourite one. Probably nostalgia talking there. But Wipeout Fusion is a great Wipeout game. And for them to pump it out early days on the PS2, I think is what led to the PS2 being so successful. From the early like year, the year launch window was so for the bangers, so for the quality games. And they were right to put out sequels for mega popular franchises. So, you know, Gran Turismo, Wipeout Fusion, getting Grand Theft Auto 3 out as an exclusive for PS2 that early as well was just a winner for Sony and the PlayStation brand, in my opinion. So yeah, Wipeout Fusion is a great one. And on to the last bunch. These are the shooters. I feel like PS2 has an abundance of amazing shooters, but the early days of PS2 had amazing collection, man. Such a good, that first year had such a great collection of first-person shooters, and I'm a massive first-person shooter fan. So yeah, we were eating well back in the day. The first one I showcased is 007 Agent Under Fire, a really cool James Bond shooter game. You use your gadgets, you have driving segments, a really great Bond game all on its own, to be honest. And I feel this generation of Bond games might be the best generation of Bond games, right? Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, Everything or Nothing, From Russia with Love. There were some great Bond games that started with Agent Under Fire that went through the whole PS2 generation. And yeah, we were doing really well as not just Bond fans, but shooter fans, video game fans. When this game came out, I think this game was absolutely banging awesome, and it still holds up really well today as well. That's James Bond, Agent Under Fire. One of the most miraculous, ports ever. And the fact that it came out on PS2 so early on, you know, was absolutely bonkers to me back in the day. And actually getting to play it was awesome. This was my introduction to this game. Obviously, I've played the PC version since, and I love the PC version. But it's a Half-Life on the PS2. The fact that they got this out super early on the PlayStation 2 is miraculous to me. The fact that it actually runs really well and plays great is also almost an impossible feat, right? They got this game to be as close to the original as possible, but on inferior hardware on the PS2. Again, all these games I'm showing you, I feel like they led to the early days of the PS2 being an absolute monumental success. And Half-Life on the PS2. People back in the day that didn't have a PC or could run Half-Life probably saw, you know, articles about Half-Life or heard word of mouth about Half-Life, and now they could play it on PS2. So I think this was a big winner back in the early days of PlayStation 2. That's Half-Life. Moving on to more shooters. Red Faction, another game that really showcases what the PS2 could really do in terms of a software and hardware capability. Destructive environments, was kind of novel back then, and this game had like amazing physics and amazing ways of destroying the environment, and you can make tunnels through the whole map and stuff. Really cool stuff. But again, it's a first-person shooter, so the shooting was awesome as well. Again, a birth of a new franchise on PlayStation 2, and I can't want it to come back. It kind of just died randomly, right? This series needs to come back. Again, awesome game. We were all eating really well in first-person shooters on the PS2. Next up for shooters is another birth of a franchise that needs no introduction, but yeah, one of the best shooter franchises of all time, right? Time Splitters, really cool, different time periods, shooting bad guys, kicking ass. It's from Free Radical, made up of guys from like Rare who made GoldenEye, so you can hear like it's got a GoldenEye vibe to it. You've got like GoldenEye sound effects in there, so there's a bit of like little nostalgia things in there that will kind of hook people that have come from the N64 and moved over to the PS2, for example. Yeah, this game is so good. Love it to pieces. Yeah, again, a birth of a brand new franchise back then on PS2, and another franchise that has gone away. He's come back, right? Time Splitters. The final game I want to showcase for how good we got it in those early years of PS2. Like I said, Sony had the best ideas for getting sequels for massively popular games and getting them on PlayStation 2 as early as possible. And this might be the biggest sequel to come out on PS2 and be a massive success. It is going to be, of course, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. I can't emphasize how hyped I was for this game, and I'm sure many others as well were hyped for Metal Gear Solid 2 before it came out. Metal Gear Solid 1 was such a massive hit on PS1. For me, it was the game that changed games forever. You know, that game came out when I was 12, so it changed what games could be. It felt like I was playing almost like I was in part of a movie. It felt movie-like. It meant, you know, that term, cinematic. But the hype was unreal for Metal Gear Solid 2. To the point where Zone of Enders, another great early PS2 game that I don't own, had a demo packed in for Metal Gear Solid 2. So loads of people bought Zone of Enders to play the demo. And then when this game came out, it absolutely just blew the socks off of people. Bit of a bait and switch to begin with. You don't play as Snake, you only play Snake at the beginning, but then you play as Raiden later on. But the storytelling, the gameplay was still quintessential Metal Gear Solid style, and it was awesome. Yeah, probably the biggest game in this set when it concerns early PS2. Grand Theft Auto 3 might be up there as well alongside it, but I don't really remember the hype for Grand Theft Auto 3, but I feel like with the pedigree of Metal Gear Solid, the hype for the sequel here was unrelenting, right? Unreal. But yeah, I feel like we were just doing so well for video games in the early 2000s. The early days of PS2 were absolutely monumental, and I think they were absolutely firing on all cylinders. We got some of the best games ever. We started some of the best franchises ever. And yeah, I think PS2 probably still would have been a success, but I feel like the games lineup in that first year alone just really proved that they had the games to back up the system and the hardware, and it just kicked all kinds of ass, right? It absolutely did, and it's the biggest selling console of all time, and it is so great to collect for now as well, because it's a permanent time capsule into the early 2000s, into the past for me, remembering the hype for it, remembering the magazines, remembering everything about it, and those early days were just so pivotal for Sony and PlayStation. And they kicked all kinds of ass. I can talk about the later years as well, and how we got some of the best games ever made. God of War, Resident Evil 4, etc, etc. Vice City, San Andreas. It can go on and on, right? But those early days don't get talked about enough, in my opinion. And I've probably missed a bunch of games out that I could have showcased here, but these are just the games that I currently own at the moment. But yeah, the early days of PS2 were absolutely just monumental for video games, and I feel they go a bit under the radar a little bit, so I wanted to showcase some of these games here. Of people forget how early on in the PS2 lifespan they came out, and those early days were absolute fire. So there's it, guys. That is my look back at the early 2000s and the very first, maybe like launch year of the PS2, and how this stack alone just proves how absolutely awesome those first couple of years were for PlayStation 2. It's actually quite amazing how good it was, considering I feel like the last couple of generations of PlayStation have been pretty middling. The first couple of years of PS4 wasn't that great, and let's face it, I don't think PS5 has been that great at all, really. It's been 5 years on, it hasn't been as good. But that first year of PS2 just eclipsed both those generations combined, in my opinion. The level of quality and the level of amazing titles that came out, birthing new franchises, is just unrivaled to me. That's why PS2 is one of the best systems ever. It's one of my favourites. I love collecting for it. And yeah, so it's a permanent time capsule for a time long forgotten that I wish we had back. So that's it, guys. Let me know what you think about the early days of PS2 and what are some of your fondest memories from back when the PS2 came out. And let me know what are some of your favourite games that came out between 2000 and 2001 that you just can't, talk about enough, and you can still jump on them now and have an amazing time with them. As always, guys, I've been Jason, and as always, let's continue to build a PS2 collection.